From Arnold Schwarzenegger's legendary prank to a veteran's lawsuit over filming explosions, Sylvester Stallone's infamous 1992 buddy cop comedy has more bizarre stories than laughs. This critical disaster swept the Razzies, fooled police with cardboard cutouts, and featured recycled baby photos from Rocky. Here are 15 weird facts you didn't know about Stop, or My Mom Will Shoot. Fact 1. Arnold's ultimate prank on Stallone. Arnold Schwarzenegger pulled off what many consider one of the greatest pranks in Hollywood history when he tricked his longtime rival Sylvester Stallone into starring in Stop, or My Mom Will Shoot. During the height of their fierce competition in the late 1980s and early 1990s, both action stars were constantly vying for the same roles and trying to one-up each other at the box office. When the script for this buddy cop comedy landed on Schwarzenegger's desk, he read it and immediately recognized it was terrible, later describing it as a piece of shit in interviews. But instead of simply declining the role and moving on, Arnold saw an opportunity to sabotage his competitor. He began telling people in the industry that he was seriously considering taking the part and that he thought it was a really brilliant idea for a movie. Word eventually got back to Stallone, who immediately called Schwarzenegger to ask if he had been approached about the film. Arnold confirmed he was thinking about doing it and praised the concept enthusiastically. Stallone, desperate not to let his rival snag what he thought might be a hit, rushed to contact his agent and told them he would do whatever it takes to get the role first. He signed on quickly without properly evaluating the script. Years later, in 2017, Schwarzenegger finally confirmed the decades-old rumor during interviews, admitting that he and Stallone did all kinds of crazy things to get ahead in our rivalry, and adding that thankfully, today they root for each other because they sure don't ever need another Stop, or My Mom Will Shoot. Fact 2. Stallone calls it worst in the solar system. Sylvester Stallone has never been shy about expressing his absolute hatred for Stop, or My Mom Will Shoot, going so far as to call it the worst film he has ever made in his entire career. In a 2006 interview with Ain't It Cool News, Stallone unleashed a series of brutal comments about the movie that left no doubt about his feelings. He declared it was maybe one of the worst films in the entire solar system, including alien productions we've never seen, making it clear that even hypothetical movies from outer space would be better than this one. He didn't stop there, adding that a flatworm could write a better script than what ended up on screen. Perhaps most memorably, Stallone joked about the film's potential uses beyond entertainment, claiming that, in some countries, China I believe, running the movie once a week on government. Television has lowered the birth rate to 0, and if they ran it twice a week, he believed that in 20 years, China would be extinct. These comments came after years of Stallone trying to distance himself from the project. The actor has explained that he believed the film should have been a dark comedy similar to Throw Mama from the Train, with the mother character being a really nasty piece of work. But instead they hired Estelle Getty, whom he described as the nicest woman in Hollywood and someone you wish was your mother. This fundamental misunderstanding of the tone, combined with the realization that he'd been tricked into the role by Schwarzenegger, made the experience what Stallone called the most unhappy experience he ever had on a film. Fact 3. Triple Razzie winner, Stop, or My Mom Will Shoot achieved the dubious distinction of sweeping the Golden Raspberry Awards in 1993, winning every single category for which it was nominated. The film competed in 3 categories at the 13th Annual Razzies and took home all 3 trophies. Sylvester Stallone won Worst Actor for his performance as the beleaguered cop Joe Bomowski, adding another Razzie to his growing collection of the Awards. Estelle Getty received Worst Supporting Actress for her role as the meddling mother Tutti, a particularly harsh recognition given that she was beloved by audiences for her work on The Golden Girls and was simply doing her best with a terrible script. The film's screenplay, written by Blake Snyder, William Osborne, and William Davies, won Worst Screenplay, with critics and Razzie voters agreeing that the script was the film's biggest problem. Gene Siskel specifically noted that if the script had been submitted to the staff of The Golden Girls, which co-starred Getty, it would be summarily dismissed as too flimsy for a half-hour sitcom. The clean sweep at the Razzies was particularly notable because the film wasn't even nominated for Worst Picture, yet it still managed to dominate the categories it did compete in. For context, other films competing that year included The Bodyguard with 7 nominations and Christopher Columbus, The Discovery with 6 nominations, but Stop, or My Mom Will Shoot's perfect 3-for-3 record demonstrated just how thoroughly critics and audiences rejected the film. Fact 4. Estelle Getty was lied to. Estelle Getty, best known for playing the sharp-tongued Sophia Petrillo on The Golden Girls, had strong personal convictions about gun violence and was initially hesitant to join Stop, or My Mom Will Shoot. When she found out during early discussions that the movie would involve firearms, she made her position crystal clear to the producers, stating that she would only agree to do the film if there were no guns in it whatsoever. This was a reasonable concern for Getty, who was known for her progressive values and activism. However, the producers were desperate to secure her involvement because they knew her popularity from The Golden Girls would help sell the movie to audiences, and they completely lied to her face. They assured Getty that there would be no guns in the film and convinced her to sign on to the project based on that false promise. The irony of this deception becomes painfully obvious when you consider that guns are absolutely central to the entire plot of the movie. The story revolves around Getty's character accidentally buying an illegal MAC-10 machine pistol, witnessing a murder committed with firearms, and eventually shooting the main villain in the climactic scene. There are shootouts, gun sales, weapons trafficking, and countless scenes featuring various firearms throughout the film. Getty's character even has a memorable scene where she cleans her son's service weapon with household products, completely ruining it. The producer's willingness to deceive such a beloved actress just to get her name attached to the project speaks to both their desperation and their lack of ethical standards during the production. Fact 5. Recycled Rocky Baby photo. In one of the movie's early scenes, Estelle Getty's character Tutti embarrasses her son Joe by showing his baby pictures to everyone on the airplane, a moment designed to establish her as an overbearing and mortifying mother. Among these embarrassing photographs is a black and white image of a young boy wearing a checkered shirt, and observant fans of Sylvester Stallone's work might recognize this particular photo because it's not just any random childhood picture. This is actually a genuine photograph of Sylvester Stallone as a young boy, and it had already appeared in another one of his films over 15 years earlier. The same exact photograph was prominently featured in the original Rocky from 1976, where it can be seen sitting on Rocky Balboa's mirror in his apartment. The decision to reuse this personal photograph from Stallone's actual childhood serves multiple purposes. On a practical level, it saved the production team from having to source or create fake childhood photos, and it added authenticity since they were using real images of the actor. On a deeper level, it creates an unintentional connection between two vastly different Stallone films, linking the beloved underdog story of Rocky with what Stallone himself considers his worst movie. For fans who notice this detail, it adds an extra layer of poignancy to see the same innocent childhood image used in such different contexts. The recycling of this prop also speaks to common practices in Hollywood, where studios maintain archives of materials from previous productions and reuse them when convenient, though it's unusual for such a recognizable and personal item to be reused so prominently. Fact 6. Marketing mislead with hair color. The marketing campaign for Stop, or My Mom Will Shoot, engaged in a deliberate attempt to mislead audiences about Estelle Getty's appearance in the film through strategic alterations to promotional materials. Throughout the actual movie, Getty's character Tutti appears with noticeably red hair, which was the look chosen for the production. However, when it came time to create movie posters and other promotional materials, the marketing team made a calculated decision to depict Getty with white hair instead. This wasn't an accident or an error in the printing process, but rather a conscious choice designed to capitalize on Getty's massive popularity from The Golden Girls. On that hit television series, which was still fresh in audiences' minds, Getty played Sophia Petrillo, a character who had distinctive white hair and had become beloved by millions of viewers over the show's run from 1985 to 1992. The marketing executives hoped that by making Getty's character in the posters resemble Sophia as closely as possible, they could trick Golden Girls fans into thinking this movie might recapture some of that show's magic and humor. They were essentially trying to suggest a connection between the two characters that didn't actually exist, banking on the idea that people who loved Sophia would automatically want to see Getty in another comedic role. This kind of misleading marketing was relatively common in the early 1990s, when studios would often manipulate promotional materials to make films appear more appealing or connected to successful properties than they actually were. Fact 7. A veteran sued over filming explosions. The production of Stop or My Mom Will Shoot resulted in serious legal consequences when filming activities severely impacted a veteran suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder. Ed Muniz, a military veteran living near the Los Angeles filming locations, had his life disrupted when the crew began filming action sequences involving explosions and gunfire in October of 1993. Muniz, who had been receiving treatment and benefits for PTSD related to his military service, had his condition rated at 50% disability by the Veterans Administration. When the first explosions were detonated during filming, the loud blasts and sounds of gunfire triggered severe reactions in Muniz, causing significant psychological distress. Understanding the situation, Muniz approached members of the film crew to explain his condition and the problems the filming was causing. According to his lawsuit, a Universal Pictures official promised him that he would be given advance warning whenever explosions were scheduled to be set off, giving him enough time to leave the area and avoid the triggering sounds. However, Muniz alleged that despite this promise, the film crew repeatedly failed to notify him before detonating explosives. The continued exposure to unexpected explosions and gunfire sounds caused his PTSD symptoms to worsen so dramatically that the Veterans Administration reevaluated his condition and increased his disability rating from 50% to 100% disabled. Muniz filed a lawsuit against Universal Pictures, and rather than fight the case in court, the studio agreed to an out-of-court settlement that awarded him $75,000 in damages, essentially acknowledging their responsibility for the harm caused to the veteran. Fact 8. Police responded to a cardboard Stallone. In November of 1993, several months after Stop, Or My Mom Will Shoot had already bombed in theaters and been forgotten by most moviegoers, the film created an unexpected real-world incident in the small town of Monticello, Utah. Local authorities received multiple urgent reports from concerned citizens about an armed man spotted inside a vacant building in town. The callers described seeing what appeared to be a dangerous individual holding a weapon, which naturally prompted an immediate response from law enforcement. A dozen police officers from the Monticello Police Department were dispatched to the scene, treating it as a potentially serious threat that required significant manpower. The officers approached the vacant building with caution, prepared to confront an armed suspect, and moved into position to storm the location. Following proper tactical procedures for responding to reports of an armed individual, the officers burst into the room where the gunman had been spotted, ready to neutralize the threat and protect the community. However, instead of finding a dangerous criminal, the officers discovered that the alleged armed gunman was nothing more than a life-sized cardboard cutout of Sylvester Stallone that had been used to promote the movie. The promotional standee depicted Stallone's character holding a weapon, which from a distance or through a window could certainly be mistaken for a real person, especially by someone who glimpsed it quickly. The incident became a source of local amusement and mild embarrassment, and it was reported in the Los Angeles Times as an example of how promotional materials can sometimes cause unintended chaos. The story also serves as a reminder of the film's quick journey to obscurity. Fact 9. UK censors cut 6 seconds. When Stop, or My Mom Will Shoot, was released theatrically in the United Kingdom, it encountered the strict oversight of the British Board of Film Classification, known as the BBFC, which has historically maintained tighter standards for violence in films than many other countries. The original version of the film that had played in American theaters without issue was deemed too violent in specific moments for British audiences, leading the BBFC to require cuts before granting the film a theatrical release certificate. The censors removed exactly 6 seconds of footage from the movie, targeting 2 particular scenes that they felt crossed the line into excessive violence. The first cut removed shots showing a man's hand being visibly crushed in a door, a moment of graphic physical trauma that the BBFC determined was too intense. The second cut involved editing both the visual and audio elements of a scene where a man is thrown from a window. The censors removed the sounds of the man's scream as he fell and the crash as he hit the ground, as well as some of the visual footage of the act itself. These cuts were made specifically for the theatrical release in British cinemas, meaning that audiences who saw the film during its original theatrical run in the UK watched a slightly sanitized version compared to viewers in other countries. However, when the film was later released on home video formats including VHS and eventually DVD, all video releases in the UK were completely uncut, restoring those 6 seconds and presenting the film as it was originally intended. This difference between theatrical and home video versions was relatively common during this era in the UK. Fact 10. Both critics gave it 0 stars. Stop. Or My Mom Will Shoot earned the rare dishonor of receiving absolutely scathing reviews from both Gene Siskel and Roger Ebert, the 2 most influential film critics in America at the time. The duo, who reviewed films together on their popular television show, both gave the movie their harshest possible ratings and some of the most brutal criticisms of their careers. Gene Siskel awarded the film 0 stars out of a possible 4, essentially declaring it completely without merit. During their televised review, Siskel delivered one of his most memorable dismissals, stating, "If this doesn't turn out to be one of the very worst movies of the year, it's going to be a very bad year," suggesting that only an exceptionally terrible year in cinema could produce anything worse. Roger Ebert was equally merciless, calling it one of the worst movies I've ever seen, not just once, but twice in his reviews, emphasizing his disgust. In his written review for the Chicago Sun-Times, Ebert awarded it half of 1 star out of 4 and wrote extensively about how the film was one of those movies so dim-witted, so utterly lacking in even the smallest morsel of redeeming value that you stare at the screen in stunned disbelief. He described it as moronic beyond comprehension and noted that even Sylvester Stallone, normally a repository of self-confidence, seemed disheartened during the film. Ebert particularly criticized a scene where Getty uses a bullhorn to embarrass her son while he's trying to talk down a potential suicide jumper. Siskel added that the script would be summarily dismissed as too flimsy for a half-hour sitcom if submitted to the Golden Girls writing staff. Fact 11. Saturday Night Live. Mock death scene. Sylvester Stallone demonstrated his ability to laugh at himself when he hosted Saturday Night Live in 1997, 5 years after Stop or My Mom Will Shoot had become one of the most notorious flops of his career. During that episode, the show's writers created a sketch specifically designed to poke fun at Stallone's filmography and his reputation for making some questionable movie choices over the years. The sketch featured Stallone's character coming across a terrible car accident where someone, played by cast member Norm Macdonald, was lying severely injured and dying. As Stallone tries to comfort the victim and help him, the dying man begins going through Stallone's various films and criticizing them one by one, ridiculing his career choices and mocking his performances. The sketch builds tension as the man gets weaker and weaker but continues insulting Stallone's movies. Finally, the victim mutters something very quietly that only Stallone can hear before dying. Another passerby, played by Will Ferrell, arrives on the scene and asks Stallone what the dying man's final words were, curious about what someone might say in their last moments. Stallone is reluctant to repeat it, clearly embarrassed by what he heard, but Ferrell's character keeps pressing him and grilling him for an answer. Finally, unable to hold back any longer, Stallone breaks down and yells in anguish, "He said stop, or my mom will shoot. Sucked." The sketch worked because Stallone was willing to be the butt of the joke and acknowledge the film's terrible reputation, showing that he had enough self-awareness and humor to mock his own biggest career mistake on national television. Fact 12. Ving Rhames' early career cameo. Before Ving Rhames became one of Hollywood's most recognizable character actors and action stars, he appeared in a small role during the opening minutes of Stop, or My Mom Will Shoot, representing one of his earliest film appearances. In the movie's opening action sequence, Rhames plays a character called Mr. Stereo, one of the armed criminals who gets into a shootout with Sylvester Stallone's character during a sting operation. The scene establishes Stallone's Joe Bomowski as a tough, capable cop by having him take down multiple bad guys, with Rhames being one of the thugs who falls victim to the hero's superior skills. At the time of filming in 1991, Rhames was still in the early stages of building his career and taking whatever roles he could get to gain experience and exposure in the film industry. This was years before he would land the role that would change his career trajectory. In 1994, just 2 years after Stop, or My Mom Will Shoot was released, Rhames delivered an unforgettable performance as Marcellus Wallace in Quentin Tarantino's Pulp Fiction, a role that showcased his intensity and screen presence and launched him into a completely different tier of Hollywood stardom. Following that breakthrough, he would go on to become a fixture in major action franchises, most notably playing Luther Stickle in the Mission Impossible series alongside Tom Cruise, a role he has reprised multiple times over decades. Looking back at his brief appearance in this widely panned comedy serves as a reminder that even successful actors often have humble beginnings, and that early career choices don't necessarily define an actor's trajectory or ultimate success in the entertainment industry. Fact 13. Ivan Reitman produced both rival films. One of the more ironic connections in the story of Stop, or My Mom Will Shoot, involves legendary comedy producer and director Ivan Reitman, who found himself working with both sides of the intense Stallone-Schwarzenegger rivalry. Reitman had already established himself as one of Hollywood's most successful comedy filmmakers by the time this movie went into production, having directed and produced massive hits like Ghostbusters, Stripes, and Animal House. In 1988, Reitman both produced and directed Twins, a high-concept comedy that paired Arnold Schwarzenegger with Danny DeVito as unlikely twin brothers separated at birth. That film was a huge commercial and critical success, grossing over $100 million domestically and helping prove that Schwarzenegger could carry a comedy. Just a few years later, Reitman signed on as one of the producers of Stop, or My Mom Will Shoot, though this time he did not direct, with Roger Spottiswoode taking the director's chair instead. The Ghostbusters producing team of Joe Medjuck and Michael C. Gross joined Reitman as producers on this project. The fact that Reitman had worked successfully with Schwarzenegger on Twins and then moved on to produce a Stallone vehicle that Schwarzenegger had deliberately sabotaged creates a fascinating bit of Hollywood symmetry. Reitman essentially served both action stars during their period of fierce competition, though with vastly different results. While Twins showcased Schwarzenegger's comedic talents and became a beloved hit, Stop, or My Mom Will Shoot completely failed to achieve similar success with Stallone and became one of the worst-reviewed comedies of the era, demonstrating that even the best producers cannot overcome a fundamentally flawed script and misguided concept. Fact 14. The Simpsons paid homage. The cultural impact of Stop, or My Mom Will Shoot extended well beyond its theatrical run, eventually earning a reference in America's longest-running animated sitcom. In Season 18 of The Simpsons, which aired in 2007, the show featured an episode titled Stop, or My Dog Will Shoot, a clear and deliberate play on the title of the infamous Stallone film. The episode's plot involves the Simpson family's pet dog, Santa's Little Helper, joining the Springfield police force after performing a heroic act by saving Homer from becoming lost in a corn maze. The reference works on multiple levels, as The Simpsons has always been known for its clever pop culture references and willingness to mock Hollywood's failures and excesses. By the time this episode aired, 15 years had passed since the original film's release, and Stop, or My Mom Will Shoot, had firmly cemented its reputation as one of the worst buddy cop comedies ever made. The Simpsons writers clearly felt confident that their audience would recognize the reference and appreciate the joke, understanding that the original film was widely considered terrible. The show's version transforms the concept from a cop partnered with his mother into a cop partnered with a dog, creating an absurd parallel that arguably makes more sense than the original premise. This kind of homage, where a title is referenced specifically because of a film's notoriety rather than its quality, represents a unique form of cultural immortality. The reference ensures that even viewers who had never seen or heard of the original movie might be curious enough to look it up, thereby extending the film's infamy to new generations. Fact 15. Filming during height of Schwarzenegger's success. The timing of Stop, or My Mom Will Shoot's production makes Sylvester Stallone's decision to rush into the project even more painfully ironic when examined in the context of what Arnold Schwarzenegger was doing at exactly the same time. Principal photography for the ill-fated comedy took place from May 14th to August 9th, 1991, spanning nearly 3 months in Los Angeles and other California locations. During this precise period, Schwarzenegger was at the absolute peak of his career, riding high on the massive success of Terminator 2: Judgment Day, which was released in July of 1991, right in the middle of Stop, or My Mom Will Shoot's filming schedule. Terminator 2 would go on to become one of the highest-grossing films of all time up to that point, earning over $500 million worldwide, and establishing Schwarzenegger as the undisputed king of action cinema. While Schwarzenegger was filming groundbreaking action sequences and revolutionary special effects for what would become a landmark achievement in cinema, Stallone was stuck filming scenes where Estelle Getty washes his gun with dish soap and tucks him into bed. The contrast could not have been more stark. Schwarzenegger's elaborate prank had worked perfectly, tricking his rival into committing months of his time to a terrible script while Arnold himself was creating one of the defining films of his career. When both films were released, the difference in reception and box office performance drove home just how completely Schwarzenegger had outmaneuvered Stallone. This timing also ensured that Stallone's competitive desperation to beat Arnold to a role was at its absolute highest, making him more vulnerable to the trick.